All right, welcome to today's webinar on car sharing programs, improving mobility with shared vehicles, presented by Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, or NEEP, in conjunction with our project partners, the Clean Transportation Coalition of Western Connecticut, Vital Communities, Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission, the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, Feeding Champlain Valley, and the Vermont Clean Cities Coalition. Next slide, please. Today we'll be doing some introductions. We'll go over presentations that will feature 2 car sharing programs, and then we'll have a discussion and Q&A, and then a wrap up at the end. Next slide, please. This presentation, as I mentioned before, is being offered by Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization founded in 1996, one of 6 regional energy efficiency organizations in the United States, and we drive market transformation regionally by fostering collaboration and innovation, developing research and tools, and disseminating knowledge. I'm Michael Anderson. I'm the Senior Manager for the Community Solutions team at NEEP, and the Community Solutions team is running the transportation planning project. Next slide, please. This project is called the Community-Driven Transportation Plans for the Northeast. It's funded by the U.S. Department of Energy Vehicle Technologies Office. The purpose of the project is to support 4 target communities in developing community-led clean transportation implementation plans to improve mobility, increase reliable and efficient access to healthcare, food, education, and employment, increase clean transportation employment, and identify paths for future economic development. I'm going to read a quick disclaimer from the Department of Energy. This presentation was prepared as an account of work sponsored by an agency of the United States government. Neither the United States government nor any agency thereof, nor any of their employees makes any warranty, express or implied, or assumes any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or usefulness of any information, apparatus, product, or process disclosed, or represents that its use would not infringe privately owned rights. Reference herein to any specific commercial product, process, or service by trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise does not necessarily constitute or imply its endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the United States government or any agency thereof. The views and opinions of speakers expressed herein do not necessarily state or reflect those of the United States government or any agency thereof. Next slide, please. This information will be offered through a regional community of practice, which is a virtual hub where you can share lessons learned from target communities through online resources, webinars, office hours, virtual presentations for stakeholder groups. You'll have the opportunity to sign up for email alerts in the chat. Next slide, please. Today we'll be joined by Peggy O'Neill-Vivanco with the Vermont Clean Communities Coalition, who will be serving as the session's facilitator, as well as Annie Bourdon, the Executive Director of CarShare Vermont, and Joe Traina, Senior Sales Executive at Commute with Enterprise. So I will pass it over to Peggy O'Neill, and we'll get the conversation started.
So I'm so sorry about that. Sorry for the delay. Hi, folks. I know many of you on this call, Peggy O'Neill-Vivanco from Vermont Clean Communities. So I'm going to be moderating this fantastic discussion. As Michael mentioned, I'm one of the project partners on we call it the NEEP project. They call it the Vehicle Technologies Office project. It's really community-driven transportation plans. And what brings us together today is this community of practice, as Michael mentioned, and really an opportunity to raise awareness and explain a little bit more about how car sharing opportunities, especially with electric vehicles, work across our communities. As he mentioned, we're working in Vermont, in New Hampshire, and the Upper Valley, as well as Connecticut. And as we've done our work and outreach in these communities with our other partners, we have surfaced information from stakeholders about a lack of access to privately owned vehicles. And as we look towards electrification, we need to look beyond single occupancy vehicles. We need to look beyond private vehicle ownership and look to our partners like CarShare Vermont as an example, and Commute with Enterprise as an example for commuters to get to work in shared vehicles. So let me start by introducing Annie Bourdon, the Executive Director of CarShare Vermont. Annie is the founder and the Executive Director. Excuse me. She's a sustainable transportation enthusiast. She has been in the car sharing industry in the United States since, I think, its inception. She helped her friends develop the San Francisco car share program in 2001 in the Bay Area, and then moved to Vermont, where we're so lucky to have her as one of our great treasures. So I'll also introduce Joe, and then we'll go ahead with Annie's presentation. Joe is the Senior Sales Executive for Enterprise Mobility. He works with Commute with Enterprise, which is a big partner of Go Vermont, which is run out of VTrans, the Vermont State Agency of Transportation. And again, as I mentioned, he works with the employer-employee connection on accessing carpooling and van pooling options. So let's start with Annie. Next slide then. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just give a quick overview of CarShare Vermont, and hopefully you'll have some exciting questions for me. Next slide, please. So CarShare Vermont was founded in 2008 as a mission-driven nonprofit. We were very deliberate about our decision to operate as a nonprofit with the goal of providing an affordable, reliable, and convenient alternative to private vehicle ownership, with the goal of reducing car dependence, improving the equity and sustainability of our regional transportation system. We provide a traditional round trip station-based car sharing service, so kind of the original car sharing model where folks pick up and return the vehicle to the same parking location, the same dedicated parking location. And we serve about 1,000 members. We've got 27 vehicles located throughout Burlington and Winooski, Vermont. Next slide, please. So how CarShare Vermont works. We have different vehicles to try to meet the needs of different trip purposes. We've got all electric vehicles, some plug-in hybrids, all-wheel drive vehicles, pickup trucks, sedans, some small compact vehicles. Right now, about half our fleet is some form of an electric vehicle, either an all-electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid. Our rates, we charge by the hour and by the distance, so hours and mileage. That's not unlike many of our peers, but it is a little different from some of our competition. We want to make sure that our pricing is equitable, so the more someone drives, the more they pay for that trip. And our rates are all inclusive of fuel, so we pay for gas and EV charging, insurance, cleanings, maintenance, roadside assistance, you name it. We even have pod nannies in the wintertime because we're in a snowy state that clears snow off the cars. Our vehicles are parked in dedicated spaces. All of our parking is secured through arrangements with different municipalities, developers, and campus partners. And this is an example of an on-street space in downtown Burlington here. Our car, Lulu, all of our cars have names, is parked there. And all of our electric vehicles have dedicated chargers so that we can ensure that the car is charged up and ready to go when somebody has a reservation. Next slide, please. So who uses our service? A resounding nearly 90%, 87% of our members belong to 0 or 1 vehicle households, which isn't all that surprising. However, not all of our members start on that path. A lot of folks, when they join CarShare Vermont, are able to shed the number of privately owned vehicles they own. So households, about 65% of households downsize their personal fleets. They shed a vehicle, or they opt not to replace a vehicle once one has died, or they avoid a purchase. 23% of our members receive free memberships through an income eligible program called Mobility Share, and they receive also some discounted driving rates and other supports. 25% of our members about are affiliated with our campus partners, which is UVM, University of Vermont, and Champlain College, which are the two major institutions in Burlington. And we serve about a dozen organizations. This is just a nice testimonial from a member who appreciates using our service. She receives a subsidized membership, and she just talks about the convenience of having access to a car instead of having to do everything lugging around a car seat with other modes. Next slide, please. So this is our impact. This is our 2024 results of our kind of annual report. And these are just a few of the metrics we utilize to evaluate our progress towards our mission. So our members dramatically reduce their VMT on an annual basis. And last year, 85%, so more than the average over the past, 10 plus years. I said 65%, but last year, 85% of our members reported shedding a personally owned vehicle or avoiding replacing a vehicle. 44% chose to walk and bike more often, and they really cut their carbon, which is terrific. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our business model. We were asked to provide a little bit of information for folks who are interested in kind of how we started and how we sustain as a nonprofit car sharing operator. So we have the business goal of becoming financially self-sufficient such that the revenue we earn from our service, from the trips members take and from our modest membership fees pays for 100% of our operating costs and mission-driven programming. And for about the past 10 years, we've been operating at a self-sufficiency rate of about 75 to 85%. And we closed the gap, the difference year to year with contributed income. And more recently, that funding has come from two primary sources, our Regional Planning Commission and the Vermont Agency of Transportation. We've received in the past, historically, strong support from private foundations and individuals, but that has kind of waned as we've gotten older and more established as an organization. The private foundation funding is more difficult to acquire to support operations and capital costs. The same is true for public funding. Our public funding primarily pays for social equity programming, though that could change, outreach and awareness campaigns. And it's kind of important to note that while we operate a 24/7 car sharing service, we also devote a lot of our organizational resources and capacity towards the outreach and awareness building and just trying to facilitate the behavior change and the shift to adopt car sharing and shed personal vehicles. And this is just an example of the latest campaign that just launched last week. It's just a snippet. This will be on the side of city buses going through the region, just trying to get people to think and reflect about how they get around and to consider car sharing. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges. I think it's a huge challenge funding on the lack of any source of funding, public funding and otherwise, to subsidize operations. So I think in our early days, it was relatively easy to attract funders who wanted to help in a pilot phase or just to start something up. But a nonprofit car sharing service, particularly in a rural state, really requires ongoing subsidy to not only sustain existing operations, but to be able to expand and build out to other rural communities. And when we think about Vermont, Burlington's our largest city, but when we think about expanding to even nearby suburbs or our state capital, Montpelier, or some other places where we've actually had pilot programs, the kind of more rural we become, the greater degree of subsidy we need to be able to sustain operations. And we've yet to identify a sustained source of funding to allow us to do that. And we're really hesitant to launch a pilot project and say, build out car sharing in 4 other Vermont towns, only to have, after a year or two, have to retract and not be able to sustain. And in the meanwhile, undermine and kind of I think stretch us too thin with our our local service, where we are able to sustain with the relatively small amount of contributed income we're able to secure. Also, some of the rural communities just inherently lack some of the conditions that make car sharing really viable. That is, you know, if a town currently does not have any form of public transportation or other modes, no ride hailing services, it's not easy to walk and bike and get around. Car sharing is unlikely to be able to work, even though there are certainly people there who would benefit from our service and who don't have access to personal cars. But if somebody needs to, you know, walk 3 miles in order to access our shared vehicle, it's just unlikely to be a sustainable model for them. So I think the rural challenge continues to be a conundrum for us. A car-dependent culture means that change takes time. And so sometimes we can invest a lot of resources into making car sharing available to a neighborhood even, and it takes individuals and households a long time to make the shift from, you know, using the example of being a 2-vehicle household to 1. And sometimes when that change occurs, the opportunity is gone and we've had to retract if it was like a pilot program where we weren't able to sustain in an area. So just we're kind of waiting out. We're kind of, our a recent tagline we've developed is that CarShare Vermont is here when you need us and when you don't, because for folks whose life changes and they're in a period of time, maybe for 6 months, they don't need access to car share, we're still here for the community. We're here for those people who do need us. And so a lot of our membership is pretty cyclical, or, you know, people come and go and use us when they need to, which is great. Overall, they're still only driving when they need to. Insurance coverage is incredibly expensive and it feels very vulnerable. There are few insurance providers that will even provide coverage to car sharing programs. We are fortunate to, because of our 501c3 nonprofit status, we do have a reliable insurance partner that we've had almost since our inception, but it's very expensive and rates have continued to increase. It's a high risk service that we provide, and it's been a barrier for other startups and other peers to be able to launch car sharing services around the country because of the lack of insurance. And we've had peers that have had to temporarily close, cease their operations because coverage was lost. So that's a big challenge. And operating a 24/7 transportation service is a labor of love, but it also can create burnout. It's, we are a very small team, CarShare Vermont in particular. There are 5 of us, and one of us is on call every weeknight. We're always thinking about our fleet and our members and keeping them safe. And it is an operationally intense job and business, and it takes a real commitment to mission, and we're lucky that we have a team that's deeply committed to make it work, and also a board of volunteers around the community who help shovel, clear snow, all of those good things, but that's a major challenge, and I'm happy to dive into more details about any of these challenges and kind of our origin story if folks have more questions later on. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Annie. I guess full disclosure, I'm on the board of CarShare Vermont. So thrilled to be a board member. So we're going to take questions at the end. Now we're going to hear from Joe Traina about Commute with Enterprise. Joe, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you to the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships team for giving me this time to speak with everyone this morning. Again, my name is Joe Traina. I am the Senior Sales Executive from Commute with Enterprise, which is a division of Enterprise Mobility, or most of you may know it as Enterprise Rent-A-Car. But today I'm going to be speaking about how we can unlock that potential through targeted, customized commute programs, specifically van pooling. Next slide. So what I did today is I put an agenda together just to keep myself and everyone on track. So first we'll take a look at Commute with Enterprise at a glance. I'll then speak about some of the impacts and the trends that we're seeing with commuting. Next, I'll explain how everything works. And then finally, how organizational leaders can support and implement these benefits. But yeah, please put any questions in the chat. But again, they said we're going to leave some time at the end for everyone to ask questions. So we'll jump right in. Next slide, please. Taking a look at Commute with Enterprise as a division, right? So currently we're the largest van pool provider across the country. Today we have over 10,000 van pools, which carry 60,000 riders nationwide. All of this helps to eliminate 50,000 vehicles off the road each workday, taking those vehicles off the road. And by doing this, we're able to eliminate 1.2 billion commuter miles and over 900 million pounds of CO2 emissions annually. And then again, on top of that, we're there to save the end user, right? So users save close to 725 million compared to driving their single occupancy vehicles, which was mentioned earlier today. Now, of course, we cannot do this alone, right? So what we do is we partner with public transit agencies to offer funding and extended transit programs in over 100 markets across the country and still growing today. For example, specifically, we've partnered with Go Vermont, who provides a 50% monthly subsidy. So what they do is they pay 50% of the cost to each group or each van pool that is starting. So right off the bat, they've got 50% off of the cost of this program. And after that, what we do is we will work with those specific organizations that can also provide additional funding to these groups, which just lowers the end cost to the users. And I'll go into a little bit of what that savings looks like a little later, but next slide, please. So trends and studies, right? So studies have shown how several trends can shape how consumers choose transportation options. First, economic pressures and the return to office mandates that we're now seeing, they're causing additional stress on households. Businesses and consumers are seeking value beyond price. The convenience or preference of driving alone is challenged by the rising fuel costs and having to keep up on the repairs on some older aging vehicles. So those aging personal vehicles not only pose increased costs, but safety and environmental challenges. Then we have millennials, right? And Gen Z becoming the more dominant force in the market, which brings unique needs and preferences. These generations value technology, integration, and 70% of millennial job seekers want to see a company's commitment to sustainability. So, actually shifting in the way we look at things. And then lastly, time and efficiency. Congestion, traffic continue to worsen. Consumers are looking at ways to optimize their travel time, which influences their choice in transportation modes. And all this adds up. Now people are looking at their choices a little more closely. Next slide. So I put together some impact numbers. So I really want to take a look at the data behind these trends that we just spoke about. But more than half of Americans are worried about maintaining the cost of living. But the number that resonates with me the most on this slide is 19% of an employee's take-home salary is spent just on their commute. And that cost, that transportation cost is in general, is the number 2 household expenditure right behind housing. So the second highest cost in the household is transportation. And in fact, the average cost per mile just to own and operate a vehicle was 56 cents per mile. And in some areas that we see in the Northeast is closer to 66 cents per mile. But for those seeking lower cost or shared options for the increasingly long commutes, the answer isn't always easy, right? So we've got some great public transit systems around the area, but most of them are kind of limited to those urban city centers and surrounding suburbs, leaving nearly half of the US population out of reach of a mass transit option. So without those options for lower cost and reliable transportation, commuters are left to rely solely on aging higher mileage vehicles and the cost is higher to maintain them. So to get to and work just becomes a burden. Next slide. So a good look, of what our solution is at Commute with Enterprise and what van pooling is. So van pooling is simple and easy. It works like, a larger carpool, but has more advantages. So what we do is we connect those employees together and provide them with a recent model SUV or van. We've got everything from minivans, 7-passenger minivans, all the way up to a 15-passenger van. And then we work with that group specifically to find a convenient meetup spot, typically a park and ride or a parking lot where they can all leave their cars. And then that group works together and rotates the driving responsibilities. So the more drivers, the better, but participants can choose to just be a rider as well, right? If they don't want to be a driver, they could just be a rider. But best of all, the Commute group enjoys all the benefits of sharing a ride. And through the Commute program, we provide everything in a monthly rate that they need for a safe and reliable ride. Fuel and tolls are included. We provide all the insurance to protect the vehicle, so full collision coverage with 0 deductible. We also provide liability insurance, and then we also handle all the maintenance, the roadside assistance, 24-hour roadside assistance, and also included in that is a guaranteed ride home. So if the entire group does get to work that day and there's a sick child at home, they are provided with a reimbursement for an Uber or Lyft ride home in case of an emergency. And then participants can self-serve through our mobile app now, which is brand new, that they can also have the option to reach out to other, reach out for local assistance or one of their representatives that we have here for any questions or concerns. And then they get to enjoy all the benefits. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits for the employers, so those organizations that we work with? Well, our program does provide a competitive advantage for our partners when it comes to recruiting and hiring new employees, as well as retaining those valuable employees. Once you hire them, you want to get them. By providing this transportation options, we're able to help our partners expand the recruiting radius, which helps to strengthen that benefit package that they can offer at the beginning over the employees who don't offer commuter benefits. One of the most common reasons for employees leaving their job is due to a commute, right? Our program removes the cost and burden, so those employees have an easier and more affordable way to get to work. The savings and productivity, as mentioned earlier, the typical employee spends that 19% of their salary on a commute each year, but employees can save on average right now $10,000 per year across the nation, across the country, just by participating in this program instead of driving their own car. Plus, they'll also arrive to work more energized, be more productive. And just to give another Vermont specific example, because I work in the Vermont area a lot, currently those Vermont employees that are using this model are more closer to between $11,000 and $12,000 per year savings just by being part of the Commute program. As far as CO2 reduction, our program helps you to add to your sustainability initiatives and ESG goals. The typical Commute vehicle produces a little over 12,000 pounds of CO2 emissions each year. A van pool can remove a minimum of 4 of those vehicles off the road because the employees are sharing the ride and not taking their single occupancy vehicles. And as we launch and grow these programs with specific organizations, what we do is we provide them with a quarterly impact report or that data for all the miles saved, the CO2 reduction saved, that can also be used for their reporting on for the sustainability teams that work there. And as for employee wellness and the company culture, right? More organizations specifically are focusing on employee health and wellness. So by partnering with with this Commute program, you kind of help give employees an easier commute option versus driving alone. Best of all, it helps to establish a more commute culture where you shift that employee commute from an individual burden that I spoke about before into a shared value. So employees will appreciate that, to be added to the benefits besides the PTO and medical benefits. This is just an added benefit that they can add to their repertoire. Next slide, please. So why does this work across the country, right? It's needed. we spoke a little bit about the rising cost of living and the changing landscape of what's happening right now. It is measurable. So again, we do provide that data to the organizations that we work with on a quarterly basis. We sit down as a team. Our executives sit down with that team at a specific organization to go through that, to go through their goals of what they were looking to accomplish with this program, and really show them what the impact is and what the impact of the program has had, and then moving forward, what can we do in the future? Again, we've got some of the employees using this program, but here's what we could do if as the vehicle program ramps up, and that impact is discussed. I discussed the savings for the employees and the employer and the environment. So it's easy to implement. And the way we do that would be, next slide, please. Our roadmap, right? The commuter benefit roadmap, to have a successful program, it begins with the conversation at each organizations. What I will do is I will partner with these organizations to create a simple and easy benefit. It's really 3 easy steps. The first step after that conversation is mapping, right? Conduct an employee analysis to find out where your employees are commuting from. What are the patterns? Are they close to mass transit options that they could use? Well, great. Those employees can use that mass transit option, but those that are outside, they need some help as well. And this will help eliminate that guesswork and allow us to show them what the targeted approach is. Step 2, once we've identified those common commute corridors, what we look for is support from those organizations. We'll formalize that customized agreement. We'll figure out what that specific company or organization is looking to do. We'll outline it, show our commitment to launching this program and what their commitments are, whether it be a subsidy or it could be on-site parking spot for these commute vehicles. But we put that in a simple agreement. We put that on paper, and then we align everyone's goals. And then step 3, work together on that step-by-step launch plan for the employees. And again, all provided part of the program. So the communication, the awareness pieces to announce it, and really educate those employees. But lately we've been doing, Teams meetings, whether it be online or in person, all in one room. And we've got an online program or presentation where everybody can, take out their cell phones and be more interactive in this presentation to help us learn a little more about what their struggles are, and then specifically target that approach towards those specific employees. So it's simple, it's easy. One thing that is new to our model is our flexible van pooling program. So again, same benefits, but now those employees that don't work 5 days a week, maybe on a flexible schedule, where now those folks that are looking to join a van pool that may only work Tuesdays and Thursdays, well, our flexible option now allows these folks to sign up for this program and just pay for those days that they're traveling on a monthly basis. So again, great news for everyone. I open it up for questions later, but thank you for your time this morning. I know I'll open up the floor to any questions or anything else available for a side conversation. Please reach out to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And thanks, Annie. I'm going to just start with a couple questions. I see we have a couple in the chat as well. This is both for Annie and for Joe to kind of consider and respond to. Here in the United States, certainly our generation had the sense of like, oh, you get your driver's license and you have your freedom, like no wheels, no deals kind of a thing. How do you work on changing that culture? Annie mentioned, a lot of outreach and awareness campaigns for kind of shared mobility. And Joe, you talked about a lot of the work you do with employers. So can you each address, maybe Joe, you start, how you work on dealing with the American individualism while really encouraging folks to get into a shared vehicle?
Yeah, and you know what? Great question. And it all begins with the conversation, right? And educating not only these organizations and these leaders that we work with, but right down to the end user. Like a lot of times I feel, and just from experience in this division, I've been with Enterprise 27 years, and with this division 6, and learning through those years that not everyone knows what they're spending on their commute, what the effect it's having on not only the environment, on their stress level, driving each day, not having that time back, not having the savings. Really, when we sit down, it's eye-opening when we get into these meetings that I just talked about on educating employees, and we sit down and we ask, do you know what your commute costs you? And typically we hear, okay, it costs me, okay, $200 per month in fuel. Okay, that's great. What else goes into it? And to see their eyes open when we explain what goes into it, what the true cost of commuting is, what effect it's having on the environment. So really it starts with that conversation and giving us the opportunity to come into an organization and speak to the employees on what some of these options are and how they can be saving. So it really starts with that conversation and allowing us to educate everyone.
Thank you. Annie, do you want to add to that? I know that CarShare has had different campaigns that mention specifically, like, what does it cost to own a vehicle?
Sure. Yeah, we do the same thing as Joe at Enterprise. We know that our members definitely care about our mission. They care about our social mission, our environmental mission, but cost and convenience of service are paramount. And so oftentimes our members are price comparing. They may be thinking about only the cost to fill their tank of gas, but they may not be aware of the kind of ongoing fixed costs of vehicle ownership. So we've had several rounds of campaigns where we've updated this a cost of ownership and driving calculator it's different from kind of what people might be familiar with AAA because it allows people to put in all of their specific localized information of what the current car that they're driving costs, and then it outputs some comparisons to what it would cost to use public transit, use car sharing, and then we put that calculator out for a period of time, and then we were able to calculate the results and report back. And it was kind of astounding how many people underestimate the cost of vehicle ownership, and then when they think about, gosh, I could use CarShare pretty much. A heavy user at CarShare Vermont spends about $200 a month, which is peanuts compared to the average cost of ownership, which now is nearing $1,000 per month. So, and then we put back all of that information in our outreach campaigns, which is pretty effective.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that bottom line, as well as the environmental piece, can help folks think a little bit differently about what we just take for granted. So a question in the chat from my friend Lou Brzee. Lou, I'm going to have you talk to Annie later about getting CarShare to South Burlington, but I will bring up your question. I guess it's towards Joe about any plans for EVs or plug-in hybrids in your kind of van pooling program, Joe.
Yes. So currently we do have hybrid vehicles that are available, fully electric. Again, some of the, in order to qualify for the program, it's got to have a minimum of 7 seats. So these vehicles are becoming more available more and more as time goes on, those fully electric 7-passenger vehicles. It all comes down to cost, right? So again, trying to save as much as possible for the end user. We will offer, if someone is interested in a hybrid or an electric vehicle, we will offer it. Again, the cost to own or run those vehicles is a little higher from the cost standpoint. But yes, if it's something that a group specifically wants, we'd be happy to provide that. So yeah, we've got them available. It's just a matter of, again, what does that end user, trying to save them as much money, what are they trying to save? But yeah, we've got them.
Great. And I'm sure also kind of the market and the commute. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe not running up to the Northeast Kingdom in January here in Vermont. Thanks. And then Scott has a question in the chat here. Toward Annie is the perennial insurance question. More about the cost of insurance, and is the burden fully on the nonprofit, or can it be shared, split with users and members? So I'm going to ask that to Annie, and then Joe, think about the insurance piece, how that either shifts over time or market in your groups as well. Annie, I know we talk a lot about insurance during the board meetings.
Yeah. So we provide excellent insurance coverage. We have a combined single limit of $1 million, which greatly exceeds what the minimum state requirements for insurance are for car sharing or for when you're operating a vehicle. And part of this is just being proactive and wanting to provide excellent coverage, and also being aware of the risk, and wanting to ensure that our drivers and our vehicles and our community is well protected. I would say that the cost it's tough. There's not like an apples to apples comparison where you can think about what it costs to insure car share vehicle versus a privately owned vehicle. The big difference, like our recurring monthly cost, is not astronomical. I think we spend about $150 per month per vehicle. We've been with the same provider for more than 15 years, and we have a fairly good track history. The biggest cost burden for us are the combination of the deductible is very expensive. So we have a liability deductible and a collision deductible, and our collision deductible is $5,000. And most incidents involving our cars are single vehicle incidents. It's a driver backing into an inanimate object. You're hitting rocks, they're hitting the curb, they're hitting post signs. One hit scrapes the ATM going through. It's kind of drivers not being especially careful. Some of them are inexperienced drivers, and we have a lot of these recurrences of claims that hover around $5,000 or slightly more. And so we're basically self-insuring against all of our repairs and damage, and that gets very, very expensive. Our members are responsible for sharing part of that cost burden, but our deductible used to only be $500, and it only increased to $5,000 on the past 18 months. And it's really difficult to offer a service where you say insurance is included, but you're on the hook for the first $5,000. That would not make us price competitive with private vehicle ownership, which we're trying to compete with. So we have a program where we strongly encourage, it's voluntary, we encourage our members to sign up for a damage waiver program where they can pay a nominal annual fee to reduce their liability if they're in an accident. The maximum damage fee is $1,250. If they buy into our damage waiver program, they'd only have to pay $250 if they damage the car, up to $250. That's a voluntary program, and a lot of folks will say, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to risk it. I don't need to join this program, and then that means our pool to self-insure is then diminished. But when people participate in that, we draw from that resource to help pay for the cost of damage that we're basically self-insuring. But I know that our insurer is, really concerned about the risk of car sharing when we've asked in the past to kind of pivot and expand the different types of services we can provide, like even allowing during COVID in response to the early days of COVID, we wanted to allow our members to use our service to volunteer and give people rides and do the kind of free Grubhub and groceries for people, and that was forbidden. So there are a lot of limitations on what we can do, and we're always being aware of how to keep our insurance costs down, because I think we get what we get and we don't get upset. That's our attitude right now.
Spoken like a true mom. So Joe, I suspect that insurance varies by state, by market, et cetera. Any comments on how that is factored into the rate for the users?
Yeah, so again, with the flat monthly rate for these vehicles, everything is included. So full collision coverage with zero deductible and liability and maintenance, everything is included in that monthly rate. Certain states do have a higher liability cost, and it's just, state to state. But truly doesn't affect the cost in comparison to, what we're charging, right? So the cost to do business in New York may be a little higher than it is in New York. Vermont may be a little lower in price, per van pool or per monthly van pool. But again, like Annie was talking about, we're self-insured. So, if you've ever gone into a rental car to rent a car and that rental agency asks you, did you want to cover the vehicle and pay, an additional fee? The good thing about this is it's already included in the monthly rate. So there are no questions, to add that to the fee, to the monthly cost. So, and again, like Annie said, we do have bumps, we do have bruises, we do have, bumpers, that's think of the name, they're bumpers. It happens. But typically if there is an incident where the car was not drivable, we'll go out and replace the vehicle, right? We give them a new vehicle and take the other one back and just get it repaired. But yeah, it's all included, which is great so no one has to think about that. And to be on the safe side, we don't, newer drivers are not allowed to drive the vehicle. So there are some restrictions if you want to be a driver. We do run MVR checks, like typical, MVR checks on everyone to make sure they're safe. And again, each individual group is going to be different. They talk to us, right? So if there is someone driving a little crazy, it's happened before with the amount of vehicles that we have out there. If someone's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, others report back, and it's a conversation we have to have. I mean, we're all adults and have that conversation on, drive a little slower or, be more careful. It's just part of the business.
Yep. Okay. Annie, I guess back to Lou's question. And I know it's just South Burlington, right? Right across the highway there. How, and I know there's some limitations. Can you talk about how is CarShare defined, categorized? Is it transit? Is van pooling transit? Can you get state or federal funds for your type of transit? And then what do you need to expand your services to, even an area as close as South Burlington?
Yeah, those are great questions. So we like to think of car sharing as a form of public transit, but we're definitely not perceived that way in terms of the availability of funding sources and access to them. We also don't want to compete with that fund. We don't want to undermine our local transportation systems, ability to get funding for the bus service they provide. So we know that we can't exist without public transit. So we definitely are partners with our local public transit system. But we provide, it is, in terms of thinking about access to public funding, 1,000 people are sharing 27 cars, and on average, it varies. It's seasonal, but last month, which is a relatively slow month, every vehicle in our fleet was used an average of over 5 hours per day. I think it was like 5.5. When we're really busy, towards the second part of the year, our cars can get used upwards of 8, 9, 10 hours a day. When the average car gets in the US, sits parked the vast majority of a 24-hour period. So we do, sharing is a form of public transportation. And it's a lot cheaper to subsidize a shared vehicle in a town than a fixed route bus system that may be underutilized, or, you know, they need to happen in collaboration because you need the bus to get to the shared vehicle. In thinking about how to expand to other communities like South Burlington, we think there's like great opportunity as South Burlington is developing the downtown center on Market Street, where car sharing could work, especially if the people who move there know that they can do so without having to have multiple vehicles per household and are able to get to their employment without driving. Car sharing is not a solution for commuting. What Joe offers is a solution for commuting. And I think there's this misperception like, oh, bring car share and then people will use that to get to work. But if you need to drive to work, car sharing isn't going to be an option because you pay to have the car sit at your place of employment, and it makes it unavailable to everybody else. The way we look at expanding car share to other areas is through collaboration and partnerships. And some of those can happen through processes like in early on in the development phase. So like if a municipality is working with developers to build housing, which is the case in South Burlington, can the developer help share the cost providing car sharing in lieu of building excess parking? Can car sharing be integrated into that building process? So from the ground up, there's already a model of emphasizing transit, car sharing, these other modes, and not just facilitating everyone bringing a car. So we have in Burlington, we've successfully worked with developers where they help underwrite the cost of our service. There are various mechanisms we use to do that. We've had examples where like a town has done that, where they've actually helped subsidize the car. We've had only one example where a major employer has done that, but that's another way where if an employer knows that their team of employees need access to vehicles, they'll host a car share vehicle on site and make it available to their staff rather than requiring their employees to drive their personal vehicles to work. So those are ways that we can bring, I think, car sharing to South Burlington and surrounding areas, is just getting creative about helping to share the cost of operating the service and overcoming the high capital startup costs, especially if we want those vehicles to be electric too. The EV infrastructure adds another layer of cost that has been a burden for us to overcome.
Right, but getting in while, before
The planning
construction
phase
starts is good, yeah.
and having it be a condition of approval for permitting. I mean, that's what South Burlington's been working towards, that there's an emphasis on integrating transportation demand management into the permitting process, and it can reduce the permit fee to integrate car sharing and other modes.
Great, thank you. Ping-ponging now to you, Joe. There was a question from Anne. Does the University of Vermont Medical Center have a van pool? And I'm going to kind of underscore that question because the parking and shuttling of medical center staff is big with any medical center that has multiple shifts and so forth.
Yes, and to just piggyback what Annie was saying about the difference, right? We're not looking to compete. We're looking to say, hey, there are people that need the car share, right? There are people that need transit options. So again, not looking to compete, but again, Commute with Enterprise is considered a form of mass transit in the eyes of our transit partners, which is why we are able to have that subsidized program through the state, through Vermont. But yeah, again, just looking to fill in the gaps where other mass transit options don't reach. We said it before, over half of the people don't have access to mass transit, and providing them some other form of transportation or commuting to and from the office. I mean, we're finding there's a lot of single car families, zero car families that just don't have the access or the means to have everyone work. So going back to your point, Peggy, the University of Vermont Medical Center, we are currently working with the University of Vermont across the street to start a program, a van pool program, which is going to spill over to the medical center. So we're looking to, I talked about that flexible option before. What that flexible option does is it allows folks from different organizations to be in the same van pool. So once that program does get started, for example, if there were, in a 7-passenger vehicle, it's not filled every day, right? There may only be 3 people working 5 days a week, which leaves 4 empty seats for people to fill in. So that flexible option is going to would allow someone from the medical center to actually go on the app, see what vehicles are running from where they're coming from, and actually they'll be able to purchase their seats, those open seats, for the days that it's running. So again, that program needs to get established first. We're close, we're working with them. Hope to have that soon, but yeah.
Good luck with that.
Keep an eye out.
I will. All right, we just have 4 minutes left, maybe enough time for 1 or 2 more questions. So here's a question about a community that's developing a bike and ped plan, and that sort of connecting piece between transit, active mobility, car sharing. Are there any successful examples where car share programs have been integrated with active transportation infrastructure? So Annie, thinking about you and can you respond to that?
Yeah, so in terms of CarShare Vermont's experience, when we think about where we're going to locate our fleet, we always look at a key criteria are is it, the pedestrian access, the bike infrastructure, is there bike parking, and how close is it to public transportation? How that all plays out is not a tight little neat hub that is kind of jointly promoted and where everything is kind of tightly knit together, because parking policy doesn't always facilitate that. So we do not own any of the parking that we occupy. We're leaning on partners like the municipalities, our campus partners, developers, employers. And so we don't always have those connections, are not always like as tightly knit. And we're sometimes, again, taking what we can take. We also don't always get the benefit of being able to access all of the parking that we desire. So sometimes we're in competition with residents who don't want us on their block. And so we might have to be a block away, further away from a bus stop. So it's always a goal, but it doesn't always play out that way. We have had some conversations with, in Burlington, with city staff who are trying to develop a hub model. But it's interesting because in their minds, where they would like to locate some of these hubs are near centers of activity and places of activity, but there's been a focus on, for example, parks and playgrounds, which is a destination, but doesn't necessarily originate. It's not necessarily where trips need to originate. So we need to have some conversations about like, when do those modes all coalesce? And for a lot of the vast majority of our members currently, it's near where they live, and not near where they work. And that's been a shift since COVID. We used to have a lot more folks who used us during the day for their business travel. So I think it's a terrific goal. I don't have an example of where it's happened, but I think there needs to be more work to make sure that the services will be combined to best facilitate that shift of reducing vehicle dependence to make all of those modes work together.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I'm going to pass it to Michael. Thank you, Annie, for your time, and thank you, Joe, as well. To our participants, thank you for attending, and Michael, take it from here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Peggy, Annie, and Joe. That was a really, really great conversation. I did want to, and thanks to everyone for attending. We will be offering technical assistance virtual office hours on this topic. There will be information available through the link that was posted in the chat. So make sure that you sign up for that email list. And I also wanted to let people know about our annual summit that will be taking place on June 10th through 12th in Boston. we'll have some really, really great content spanning, work on buildings, transportation, and other related topics. So thanks so much to everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your day.